You set one limit, and suddenly you are difficult. They said it softly. Your stomach drops anyway. The tone is clean, almost civil, but your body hears the sentence under the sentence. You stopped answering immediately. You stopped laughing on cue. You stopped shrinking to keep the room smooth. Now they need a new word for what they are losing, so they call it your attitude. Stay long enough, and you will see what that word is hiding. You are not about to learn why people dislike difficult personalities. You are about to see how groups punish any version of you they can no longer position, and why the insult always arrives the moment your shape stops being useful. If you still need the flattering version, leave now. Once this becomes visible, you do not get to call it misunderstanding again. Nietzsche understood this mechanism long before your office, family chat, friend group, or relationship performed it in modern language. The crowd does not attack what is wrong. It attacks what refuses to kneel at the old height they assign to it. That is why the accusation sounds moral instead of strategic. They do not say, "You stopped making this easy for us." They say, "You became cold." They do not say, "You no longer let us reach into your time without cost." They say, "You are dramatic." They do not say, "We can no longer manage your scale." They say, "You changed." You hear that line and part of you still flinches because you were trained to treat approval as evidence. If enough faces harden at once, you assume the crowd must be right. If enough people repeat the same adjective, you start checking yourself for a defect instead of checking them for a motive. That is the misread that keeps you small. You think you are being judged. In reality, you are being resized. This is not about becoming rude. It is about recognizing the oldest social trick in ordinary rooms. When they benefit from your softness, your availability is called warmth. When you start protecting your own time, the exact same people suddenly discover a concern about your character. The behavior changed only at the point where their access changed. That is not moral feedback. That is access speaking in costume. You have lived this scene before. You answer more slowly because your day is full, and the reply that comes back is not a question about your schedule. It is a performance of hurt. You leave one family event early and someone goes quiet for 2 days, not because your exit caused harm, but because your exit announced that your body no longer belongs entirely to the ritual. You stop volunteering to carry dead weight at work, and the sentence lands by the coffee machine in that fake gentle tone. You used to be easier. That line is a weapon. It sounds descriptive, but it is prescriptive. It is trying to drag you back to a version of yourself that cost them nothing to use. The moment you hear it clearly, you stop receiving it as truth and start reading it as a recovery attempt. That is your first layer of immunity. They cannot shame you with a tool once you know what the tool was built to retrieve. The first thing they attack is not your behavior, it is your self-image. They know you want to be fair, they know you want to be generous. They know you do not want to become one of those brittle people who weaponize boundaries to feel important. So they do not come at you with force, they come at your identity. They place your dignity on trial and hope you will defend your goodness by surrendering your line. You do it in tiny ways at first. You reopen the conversation even when your body is asking for distance. You answer the second message after ignoring the first because you do not want to look severe. You explain the change in your tone with too much detail because you want the room to know you are still kind. Then the old arrangement returns. They relax. Their timing improves. Their requests come back without fear. Your chest tightens, but the group is comfortable again, and for a moment you mistake that comfort for peace. It was never peace. It was your reduction. A room reveals its real standards when you stop feeding them. Before that, everyone is acting inside the fantasy that kindness is mutual. After that, value becomes visible. The people who respected you will adjust. The people who are pricing you as public property will react. That reaction is evidence. Do not waste it by trying to repair the mask they just dropped. This is why the accusation arrives so quickly once you stop over-functioning. They are not studying your soul. They are measuring the loss of convenience. They feel the new friction and need an explanation that protects their innocence. Calling you difficult lets them keep the old appetite while assigning you the guilt. It is a beautiful theft if you do not know how it works. They keep the desire for access and hand you the burden of self-doubt. Watch the sequence the next time it happens. First comes your contraction. You say no, pause, delay, or step back. Then comes the social correction. A joke, a sigh, a disappointed face. A little story about how things used to be. Then comes the moral naming. Cold, proud, distant, hard to talk to. The sequence matters because it proves the motive. Your boundary came first. Their diagnosis came second. Character was not what they discovered. Character was the rope they threw to pull your old compliance back. The second thing they attack is your memory. If you are not careful, they will rename the entire history between you. The years you spent absorbing their weight become invisible the week you stop. Your loyalty gets deleted the moment it becomes inconvenient to acknowledge. Your patience, your rescue labor, your softness, your explanation, your extra effort, all of it is silently reclassified as normal. And once your labor is renamed as normal, your refusal is free to be named as betrayal. You have seen that move in groups that call themselves close. Nobody remembers how often you stayed late, covered the silence, made the first call, softened the conflict, or carried the emotional weather. The record resets on the day you become unavailable. Now the whole room acts as if your absence created the problem. Now your single no is heavier than their 100 quiet extractions. That is how the social ledger gets rigged. They erase the debt and keep the entitlement. The moment you see that trick, you stop arguing from memory in rooms that profit from amnesia. This matters. Stop trying to win by recounting your service to people committed to forgetting it. A person who benefits from your unpaid labor will always call your receipts unnecessary. They need your history blurred because a clear record would expose the scale of the taking. Your task is not to make them admit it. Your task is to stop donating evidence to a court they already own. This is where many people fail. They think clarity will save them. They think one clean explanation will reset the room. It will not. If the accusation was strategic, more information only gives them finer language to resist you with. You keep talking because you still believe the problem is confusion. It is not confusion. It is appetite with manners. That is why over-explaining feels so noble while it is happening. You think you are protecting nuance. In reality, you are applying warmth to a structure designed to absorb it. You do not owe a thesis every time someone dislikes losing access. Sometimes the highest form of self-respect is refusing to convert your boundary into a group discussion. The third thing they attack is your pace. Once they realize guilt still reaches you, they start managing you through timing. They do not need a dramatic confrontation. They only need to create just enough emotional static that you rush to clear it. They go quiet and let you feel the strain. They send the half sentence and wait. They leave the disapproval hanging just long enough for you to volunteer your old self back into the room. You know that feeling. The message sits there for 19 minutes and your body has already written 3 apology drafts. You are in the shower rehearsing how to sound calm. You are making coffee while inventing a softer version of your own boundary so nobody can accuse you of becoming harsh. Your mind calls this maturity. Your body calls it captivity. When someone can speed up your internal state without touching you, they still have a hand on your life. This is where you must become expensive in the only way that matters. Not loud, not theatrical, not punishing, expensive in retrieval, expensive in emotional access, expensive in the speed with which guilt can still purchase your compliance. If they can still trigger your self-correction on command, your boundary is decorative. If they have to live with your answer, the hierarchy has changed. That is the tactical turn. Slow down before you respond. Keep the sentence clean. Do not decorate it with apology foam. Do not outrun their discomfort for them. Let them experience the new weight of reaching for you. You are not being cruel when you stop cushioning every consequence. You are ending a counterfeit economy where your self-erasure was the group discount. The fourth thing they attack is your status inside the collective imagination. This is why the word difficult spreads so fast. It is not just about controlling you in private. It is about pre-framing you in public. If enough people hear the label early, every future boundary you set arrives already contaminated. They are building an audience around your refusal so they do not have to face it one-on-one. A mediocre room always prefers a simple villain to a clear mirror. Your refusal forces comparison. The moment you stop accepting what everyone else keeps tolerating, the contrast becomes dangerous. Your line does not only limit access, it exposes what other people are still swallowing. That is why some groups move so quickly to flatten you. They need your boundary to look excessive before it starts looking intelligent. This is where Nietzsche becomes useful again. Resentment rarely admits itself as resentment. It borrows moral language because moral language sounds cleaner than envy. A group that cannot rise to your standard will often try to lower the meaning of the standard itself. Suddenly, self-respect becomes ego, silence becomes punishment, distance becomes arrogance, precision becomes coldness. The downgrade is semantic first. They rename your height until even you forget it was height. Do not help them with that downgrade. Do not become your own translator against yourself. If you chose distance because the pattern was corrosive, keep naming it corrosive. If you lowered access because they kept confusing your openness with endless supply, keep naming it supply. If you became less available because every interaction ended with you smaller, keep naming the cost. Their favorite victory is not making you surrender the boundary. Their favorite victory is making you explain it in their language. The fifth thing they attack is your future confidence. Once a few accusations stick, you start editing yourself before you even enter the room. You decide not to speak with full weight because you do not want to seem intense. You volunteer less clarity because you do not want to look rigid. You soften the truth before it leaves your mouth because you are already anticipating the social tax. This is how a group continues controlling you long after the direct confrontation ends. They move into your anticipation. That is the deepest damage. The word difficult survives because it colonizes your posture. It makes you negotiate with invisible critics before anyone has said a single thing. It trains you to return to your smaller self in advance. And once self-editing becomes automatic, they no longer need to correct you openly. You do the resizing for them. You are responsible here too. That sentence matters because this cannot become another script where the enemy does all the work. Yes, they label. Yes, they distort. Yes, they manage through guilt, timing, and audience pressure. But you are the one who keeps treating social discomfort as evidence that you crossed a moral line. You are the one who keeps confusing friction with wrongdoing. You are the one who keeps trying to be understood by people whose advantage begins where your explanation begins. That responsibility is not shame, it is leverage. The second you accept that part of the mechanism lives in your reflex, the whole machine loses half its power. They still have their tone, they still have their faces, they still have their little moral theater, but they no longer have the old doorway into you. Their words hit a different surface now. They do not enter as law, they arrive as data. The sixth thing they attack is your appetite for belonging. This is the final layer because it is the one most people hide from themselves. You do not just want peace, you want to remain legible as good. You want the room to confirm that your boundary did not exile you from the category of lovable, reasonable, warm, decent, easy to keep. That hunger is precisely what lets them keep pricing your soul below your standards. You must outgrow the need to be called good by people made uncomfortable by your limits. Not because goodness is fake, but because their definition of goodness is often just obedience with a pleasant face. A person can be deeply kind and still become impossible to use. A person can be generous and still become costly to disrespect. A person can love without remaining available for extraction. Until your nervous system learns that truth, every boundary will feel like self-betrayal wearing brave language. So build a new test. Stop asking, did they like the boundary? Ask, what became visible when I held it? Did respect rise, or did manipulation surface? Did communication become cleaner, or did guilt arrive? Did the relationship adapt, or did the label difficult suddenly appear? Those outcomes tell you more than any speech they can give. Adaptation is respect. Moral naming after access loss is evidence of prior exploitation or prior entitlement. Either way, the room has confessed, and understand the hidden gift in that confession. The word difficult, used at the right moment, is not a wound. It is a location signal. It tells you exactly where your former overfunctioning had been keeping other people comfortable. It tells you who is relating to your service more than your person. It tells you which bonds were built on selective blindness toward your cost. That is painful, but it is also clean. Clean pain is better than contaminated closeness. The people who can meet your full shape will not need you reduced to stay. They may not enjoy every boundary. They may need to renegotiate rhythm, expectation, access, and tone, but they will not need to insult your character to preserve their convenience. That distinction will save you years. Do not chase universal approval after this. You would only be rebuilding the trap with more sophisticated language. Let ordinary rooms misunderstand what they can no longer consume. Let entitled people call your self-respect a problem if the alternative was your disappearance. Let the distance teach faster than your explanations ever could. There is a misunderstanding that ruins people right here. They hear this and decide the answer is to become icy, unreachable, superior, impossible to work with, impossible to love. That is not power. That is wounded theater. A wall is not a boundary if you built it only to avoid the risk of being seen. The point is not to become hard to punish by becoming dead. The point is to become hard to manage because your yes and your no now belong to you. You do not need to perform indifference. You need to stop performing availability. Those are not the same thing. One is armor-worn for the audience, the other is ownership. When you stop over-explaining, you are not pretending not to care. When you answer later, you are not staging importance. When you leave early, you are not manufacturing mystery. You are simply refusing to let the room convert your openness into a permanent public utility. That distinction matters because manipulators love any overcorrection that discredits your original point. If you become theatrical, they win twice. First, they lose direct access. Then they gain a story about your instability. Keep your line boring. Keep your refusal clean. Keep your nervous system out of their script as much as possible. A stable boundary is harder to smear because it gives them less footage. And when the guilt rises, do not argue with it immediately. Read it. Guilt is often just the body memory of the role you were hired to play. It flares because the old contract is breaking. It does not automatically mean you harmed someone. Sometimes it only means you interrupted a pattern that was profitable for other people and familiar to you. Familiar pain has a way of calling itself virtue. This is why your body needs training as much as your mind needs clarity. When the stomach drops, breathe once and do nothing. When the message comes in hot, let the heat pass before you move. When the disappointed voice appears, keep your sentence short enough that you can still respect yourself after hearing it aloud. You are not trying to win the exchange in real time. You are teaching your own system that discomfort is survivable and that other people's reactions are not commands. The more often you survive that moment without returning to your smaller self, the more your whole social field changes. Some people will leave because the old discount expired. Let them. Some will try one last round of moral pressure because they sense the window closing. Let them try. Some will adjust and meet you at the new height. Keep those people. That is how your life stops being organized around the fear of being called difficult and starts being organized around the cost of betraying yourself. Now that you see the mechanism, you become the one they cannot resize. They lose the old version of you the moment you stop defending your limits in the language of their comfort. The crowd calls you difficult when your access stops being public property. Subscribe if you want to keep catching the mechanism one video before it catches you.